a lot of African countries like Angola, Nigeria, these guys have earned lots of money in oil and gas production. But has it translated to bettering the life of the average Nigerian or the average Angolan? Probably not. Why? Because those monies have not been effectively utilized. Number one, in terms of building more infrastructure and improving and increasing capacity. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have. When we earn money from natural resources, you must build more infrastructures, you must improve capacity. Because if you don't, then you're going to remain where you are. And that's the difference between developed country and developing countries or undeveloped countries. Because when those guys earned money, they used it to develop the right infrastructure. The United Kingdom or Britain, they didn't have a lot. They came to Africa. They plundered the resources here. Took it over there, but they utilized the monies effectively to build infrastructure and to enhance capacity, build capacity. Now we go, everybody wants to study in the US, you want to study in the UK. Why? Because they have built institutions over the years. The road networks are good, the train transportation network is good, internet, it's super fast. They have built infrastructure.
Is it possible to remember the rail lines like which are in your country? Because ours, we don't have really a strong rail line. What's your level of the transport sector, the infrastructure, the roads and the railways, and maybe also the air transport?
So air transport is good. For example, in Nigeria, there's a good air transport network across practically almost every state in Nigeria.
How many airfields and air and companies do you have?
Literally every of the 36 states has an airport.
36 states?
Yeah, so you can literally fly anywhere in Nigeria.
By air?
Yeah.
36 states, each has an airport.
Yeah, the rail line was very good in the 70s and 80s, and then it all broke down just like...
So like us here, we have sub-regions. We have 24 regions. So initially, if I was to compete with you, I'm supposed to be having in each sub-region to have one airfield.
One airfield, one airport.
One airport.
Yeah, so there are multiple international
airports. And currently we have like two. We have one, by the way, the main one.
Just one, and then the new, the Kabale airport that it's being developed.
We need to do a lot then. we go on now. I'm saying this so that those who are saying everything is well, we can know. Yes, we are not saying we are bad off, but we have a lot to do. Don't go and sleep and say, no, we have steadily progressed, everything is well, we must challenge ourselves. I like it that way. When you want to be a poor child, you just stay in your mother's hut and you think that's the best place to stay in. And the moment they take you somewhere where they are living in a storage building, you say, I'm really not sleeping very well. Yeah. You would like, again, to make a comparison of other factors that support developing economies. And you had talked about the pillar of infrastructure, then you had talked about air transport, then railway. Would you give us, if at all you remember the figures of how many railway lines are actively working
so,
in Nigeria?
So if you look at the Nigerian railway system, it's, it was very good in the 70s and 80s, but then it broke down completely, and it was completely non-functional. But the last two administration has been working on it to revive the railway line. So right now, a lot of the railway...
So it had the challenge also?
Yeah, it had its own challenge. So it was efficient, it was a major means of transportation for Nigerians.
So what was the cause of its breakdown?
Poor management. Decline? I think generally, it's not just in Africa, but everywhere, things that are managed by government, never, it's not sustainable.
So the railway transport, the rail transport is not doing well.
It wasn't doing well, but now the last two administration has been trying to revamp it and bring it back to life. So there've been new railway lines being built. Some are functional now, so you can move from, for example, Lagos to certain part of the south. You can move from Abuja to the north to Kano, Kaduna, Katsina. So there's a good network of rail lines now. Some currently operational, but some are still being developed. They are not completed. And so it's being revived again because I think government recognize the importance of rail line.
Because it eases, it gives an enabling environment for doing business.
Yeah, Nigerian roads are quite similar to the Ugandan roads. Gaetano often calls Kampala the pothole capital of the world. And I often say, I don't think so. I think I've seen worse elsewhere. So with a rail line, you ease off the pressure on your roads. Yeah.
And the cost of transport, especially for doing business,
well.
because it's one of the challenges we are facing here.
Yeah.
Then water transport, because this water is that was as a natural resource, and it's an enabling, infrastructure, base in terms of transport.
Again, I think water transportation is not very well utilized in Africa. It's not just a Ugandan problem. I don't think Nigeria is using its water ways effectively as a means of transportation because that has not been properly developed. Even here in Uganda, people spend hours on traffic just to get from Kampala or Entebbe to Jinja, while you can do that in less than an hour using the waterways. So again, the waterways are not well developed across Africa. And I think there's a need for a bit of focus on that in terms of, and I think Uganda being a landlocked country really needs to look at its water transportation because that could be a means to sustain and enhance production and economic growth. Being landlocked, you can move things easily from Uganda to Tanzania and then find your way to the ocean where it becomes easier. So there's a need to improve on that.
More opportunities.
The lake is there.
There are more opportunities, water governance, that I would like as a natural resource and as a potential sector that we need to inform the viewers. The other day, the beginning of the Econ Monday, we were having a talk show here, which invented into the available opportunities of how best we can utilize, this resource, water as a resource.
Yeah.
And we are having rivers, we're having lakes, we have here Lake Victoria, but we find that we are still struggling on how best we can use it. Because out of it, those who have gone into beverage, it supports the industry. It supports industry. Yeah. Then also we look at many other potentials as, a natural resource expert that I would like to first reveal to the viewers how water is a potential resource.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the, about 24% of Ugandan GDP comes from agriculture, forestry and fisheries. So fisheries play an important role. So water resource is an important thing when it comes to fisheries. Also, when it comes to farming. Particularly now that most farmers in certain part of Uganda will tell you how things have been terrible the last few months. This last planting season, their maize died, a lot of things died because there was no rain in certain parts. Few people were luckier, those who were closer to the lake, maybe in the western region. But again, the question is, with this huge amount of water and water levels as shallow as 60 meters, 70 meters under the ground, Uganda has a huge water resources that can enhance its agricultural production, enhance fisheries, enhance various aspects of the economy. So it's a huge natural resources that even though Uganda is earning money a lot from fisheries, there's still a lot to earn for utilizing the water resources. There is a lot of agricultural product, especially now that climate change effect is beginning to show up and we're beginning to see longer drought in some places, even too much rain. The natural resource, the water resources can be effectively used to support agriculture. I was telling you about the state of California in the USA earning $50 billion from agriculture, and a lot of what they grow is vegetables. Now, $50 billion, that is almost with Ugandan GDP of $37 billion, just from agriculture alone, from growing vegetables and seeds, they are earning $50 billion a year. But the whole GDP of Uganda is $37 billion a year. So those guys are, what is the difference? They are effectively utilizing their resources to grow crops. The water resource are being used to grow crops for export, not just within the US, but even outside of the US. So there's quite a lot. We have a huge lake, lots of other lakes outside Victoria, rivers, that those water resources can be effectively utilized for fisheries and for agriculture, which can enhance the GDP of...
I'm adding also industrialization, especially beverages.
Absolutely, yeah.
Beverages and other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that is where we need to skill up the workforce to increase productivity. The truth is that an educated farmer will produce more than an uneducated farmer. That's fact.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's why we need now to deal with the restructuring. Now, we were looking at education and then natural resources. We'll be drawing our point of view in discussion as I bring it back to you to kindly give us the comparative analysis that we can be able to draw lessons to come back here home, and as also you go back elsewhere, I mean whether home, Nigeria, and even other countries on the continent. Okay. Here we deal with the East African region. When I talk about here home now, I don't always mean Uganda. I mean Kenya, I mean Tanzania, I mean Southern Sudan, I mean Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah. We are now having that spirit of, the East African community integration, where what is to be good for Uganda should be good for these other neighboring countries. Yeah. And our dream still stands where we will one time be one as Africa in the spirit of Pan-Africanism. Absolutely. Especially ensuring that we do care. We already have the African Union, but we want to see more realities happening on how we can support one another. Yeah. So we tend to be lacking, having a gap of especially taking time to adapt the new, transformational approaches. Yeah. And yet, those countries which have turned their fortunes around to develop their economies to be first-world economies, they just tapped briefly, they just tapped simply into these opportunities. Would you give us a comparative analysis of some of the Western world and maybe Asia and then Africa? Then we look at how we can emphasize on what we can do best.
Yeah. So let me come back a bit and talk about human capital index. If you look at the World Bank Human Capital Index and look at the global ranking, while Uganda sits comfortably high in terms of literacy rate, but Human Capital Index, Uganda sits very low. In fact, among some of the worst in the world.
That's what I said, yeah.
So there's a problem there. The problem is there are two things that determines Human Capital Index, health and education. But education plays a very important role. So we wouldn't say that the literacy rate is low here, it's not. What it means is that the education we are offering is not translating to economic growth.
The education we are offering is not transforming to economic growth. That's a clear statement.
So we need to rethink how we educate people. We need to rethink, are we educating people in the right areas that support the immediate need of this country? If you look at the countries that are very high up there in the Human Capital Index, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, they are the countries that are doing well in terms of economy. The Scandinavian countries are high up there and they are doing extremely well. Their economies are growing. They're taking people literally out of poverty. Their literacy rates are also as excellent as possible. So if you look at all of this, it means that there are things that we possibly are not doing right. If I go back to the US again, one of the smallest states in the US is the state of Wyoming. The state of Wyoming, being one of the smallest states in terms of GDP, has a GDP of $41 billion, which is still higher than the GDP of Uganda. This one of the smallest states. If you look at the state of Delaware, Delaware has a GDP of $80 billion.
So why state the population? What's the population?
Population, I don't have the exact figure for the population, but I do know that Delaware has a land mass of 5,000 square kilometers compared to Uganda's 242,000 square kilometers.
200.
Yet its GDP is 242,000 square kilometers. That's the land mass of Uganda.
Then the Dawa?
The state of Dawa is 5,000.
5,000.
Yeah. but they have a GDP of $80 billion.
80 billion.
Yeah, compared to Uganda's 37. So it means that we still have a huge space for growth. We have a huge space for innovation. We have a huge space to turn things around. There's still a lot that we need to do. And the country, Uganda, for example, is lucky to have very good fertile soil. And except for now, this effect of climate change that we are beginning to see, you have 3 seasons a year, which you don't find anywhere else. It's 1 season in the UK. It's 1 planting season and that is it. Here you have 3. And you're still producing far less than countries that have just a fraction of the land that you have. There is something that needs to be done. And that is where technologically enabled industries, technologically enabled agriculture is needed. Because if you compare with
let's go into the in-depth of that. Is it because we have a poor land policy? Because here the land policy, which is categorized in line with land ownership, there is free leasehold, customary land tenure. There is also the leasehold ownership. There's the free one, and there's the other one which is 5 years, then renewable. Then there's also, we still have a problem here where the cultural ownership of land, especially by cultural institutions in the form of the Milo land and all that. And you find that land is redundant, cannot be used, and you cannot touch it. And the government cannot do much. You find we have an utilized land, the Arab land, around over 12 million square mile kilometers, which not put on the utilization. Some of this is cultural land, other is either made absentee landlord, and someone either is not using it, it's just there. So what's causing this? Because it's a bit a critical point, especially in the matter of utilization of our available land as a natural source.
So again, for me, I don't think it's just, the land tenure system might contribute to some difficulties, but I think it's because we are still very traditional in our agricultural approach. If Israel, that is practically a desert, has been transformed into a huge agricultural producing area by using technology, then the problem is that we are not utilizing technology effectively and efficiently to support our agricultural production. Agriculture is a main GDP contributor in Uganda. And so there's need to visit agriculture again and see how we can enhance the process. Again, the last time I was saying that why an average 1 acre of maize here will give you about 1,000 kilograms of maize. The same 1 acre in the US gives you 4,500 kg. So you can see that there's still something. It's that we are not using the right seed, we are not using the right technology. We need to improve our system.
But it takes us back again to capital, because as we talk about developing economies, capital is
human capital.
There's human capital, and there's also the financial, the investment, financial investment into these production cycles relating especially with agricultural production. There's what we call the macro agricultural production, which requires the agricultural mechanization, and which agricultural mechanization here is not yet a common phenomenon, using overhaul.
That's where technology enabled agriculture.
Let me tell you this. And some citizens outside there, they seem to be happy. I talk, especially when you go to Kigezi, you find a member of parliament, and citizens, they don't have what to do. And neither also the member of parliament do I condemn that member of parliament goes to distribute hose. One of the programs was to distribute hose. The distribution of hose, hand hose, initially wouldn't be a bad program, but the macro management of our land policy, especially to utilize our land, agricultural mechanization would have been the best, because we haven't utilized the land. And still also there's a need to work on the policy. So the technology seems to be lacking. What is your comparison between the two?
So if you look at the way agriculture is done in India, in China, they were as crude as it's done here in Uganda or in Nigeria or East Africa, West Africa. But over time, they have allowed innovation to help them to look at better ways of doing things. Now, they have created or fabricated even handheld tractors. They have manufactured slashers that are electronically, that are mechanically controlled with a battery or a petrol. So where you get 35 people slashing, what they will do in a day, one person will do with a slasher. So they have allowed technology. So I think that's where government needs to start to encourage innovation. Our problems, one of the problems we have with universities in Africa, including one of the biggest or one of the top universities in Africa, Makerere, is that we do research, but it ends up in shelves covered by dust. It doesn't translate into any innovation. Matoki, for example, it's something that every Ugandan eats, especially people from central Uganda, the west and the west. Yeah. And the way that you peel matoki today is the same way that it was peeled by your great-grandfather. Nothing has changed.
Since 1960.
And we have production engineers and mechanical engineers coming out, teaching in universities and chunking out students, and they cannot provide a simple solution that makes life easier for people. Look at what the Chinese are doing. Everything, they're looking for a quicker way of doing it. So they're generating and producing things. They can make a fruit juice by just pressing a button. Put the orange there, put whatever, press a button, it's done. We are not creating local solutions to our local problems. And that's what you expect research centers and universities to be doing, creating local solutions for local problems. And when you do that, you will grow, because this is where industries spin out. And this is where people will think, oh, you have capacity. Why is China doing so well? Because the UK now thinks, oh, these guys can do this thing better and quicker. So let's get them to do it for us. The Americans are going to China to start up, get things manufactured. Why? Because these Chinese are finding local solutions to local problems, and these local solutions that they're creating are becoming global solutions, and they're earning money from it.
So you look at, there's a good point you bring out, the local solutions, and looking at those potential, especially in the agriculture, the utilization of land as a natural resource. You talked about water, we appreciate, and where you even emphasized on fish farming. And the other day when we were here, someone, one of the director of an NGO of water conservation governance, he talked about how you can be in an urban area, and even if it's whether rural area, but what you need, you only need a plastic tank, and in the plastic tank you can be able to do fish farming within your compound, even within your small area where you are renting. I just, applauded that good information. And the viewers outside there, it is still something we need to think about. You find that you come from the rural area, especially I'm talking to you who are in the urban area, in the area of Kampala, area of Akiso, and you think that you don't have any opportunity, you say you don't have land. Anything that provides a small space, even over your roof, is still land.
Absolutely.
But we have, as we've talked about technology, I'm applauding your submission. You find that you are not able even to use your veranda to know that in this veranda, if I have a water liter tank of how many, maybe 500 liters, I can be able to do fish farming of 100 fish, which can, fish which can be kept, taken care of within the very tank. And those are the areas we are missing, the technology and the innovation, which you've talked about. But again, we look at, I'm looking at that comparative study that you're making in those areas, and I again go to other important areas of minerals. The utilization of our mineral resource. Of recent, we were able to discover that gold, especially if we concentrated in trading in gold and iron ore, we could earn much more, which poses a framework and possibly the practicability of dealing with the exploration of these many minerals. In Uganda, we have around 44. it's true, you had already talked about the education, the skilling, but still we are lacking. I don't know, and it's you who may either give us your theoretical and practical approach. What can propel us to operate also at a quicker speed, like how other countries have utilized this and turned around their current opportunity into economic potential to develop?
Yeah. So again, if you look at Uganda, you just talked about iron ore, which is in abundance.
Gold,
so
we had copper.
Gold in abundance, copper. So the amount of minerals available, it's amazing. So, but what then? Are we exploiting this effectively? A lot of the time, there's illegal mining, even by foreigners, which needs to be properly policed. And when these things are mined, I think government needs to. You see, my problem is not just a Ugandan problem, but an African problem, which I mentioned the last time, is that we tend to be consumers rather than producers. When we generate revenue, we distribute it. Now I hear about the parish model.
Parish development model.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't have the full details, I don't fully understand it, but I hope it's not a sharing formula. Rather, I hope it's a production formula. So rather than share money, what we need to do is take money from the exploitation of selling gold, exploiting copper, exploiting ore, and use it to enhance capacity. I want to be able to produce more gold, spend some of that resources for infrastructure that connects the different towns and cities, that makes it easier for businessmen to thrive anywhere they are because there is effective transportation network. These are the things that will grow the economy, and it is how the people who have effectively utilized their natural resources, this is what they have done. We are not doing it. We earn this large amount of money, like the Nigerian government did many years ago, and we share it among ourselves, rather than using the money to create infrastructures, enhance capacity, and then you have now more capacity to produce more and earn more money. It becomes a spiral, and your GDP grows. You lift more people out of poverty. I think government needs to have a very clear plan in terms of, this is the plan to get 20 million people out of poverty, 30 million people out of poverty. This is what we need to do. As we earn this money from gold, we take a percentage of it and plow it back into developing our capacity to produce more. As I earn more oil, I take part of the money and plow it back into other sectors of the economy that will generate me more revenue. Uganda is a beautiful country. I go to Dubai and, wow. But in my head, being an African, I'm thinking all of this is artificial. But here, it is natural. Why are people not preferring to come to Uganda? Now, you know how much Dubai generates from tourism? Even if oil dries up today, Dubai will sustain themselves forever depending on tourism. And Uganda have more beautiful futures. Everywhere. So why not take money from oil production when it starts and develop the tourism sector? Why not take money from gold exploitation and develop the tourism sector, so that you create another major source of income, foreign income coming into the country?
Or you take it to industrialization.
You take it into industrialization. There's a lot of raw materials that
How many industries are in Nigeria?
Well, there are so many. But again, if you look at Nigeria, Nigeria used to produce a lot of textiles coming from the north.
Do they grow cotton?
They grow cotton, they grow wheat, they grow so many things.
Especially for the raw materials for the textile production.
Yeah. So what killed Nigeria was when oil came. So before oil came, Nigeria used to earn a lot of money from cocoa, from rubber, from coffee, from wheat, from granite. And then oil production started and those industries died. Because everybody, that was the resource cost. Everybody focused on oil.
We also had that challenge in 1970, of course, the Amin regime, which caused our economy to have a serious shock, and which the NRM was trying, has been trying rather to rehabilitate or to reform, but which is still lacking. There is a disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of resources.
Trigger to where we are expected to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources that needs to be developed. Why is Ugandan selling coffee beans and not coffee? Yeah. Why are we selling crude raw material that value has not been added instead of selling refined product at a higher price and make more money? So the problem is, the truth is, there's no government in the world that has all the money in the world to do what they want to do. Capital is limited.
There's a question I would like to have as we discuss in this towards having a break in 2 minutes. You seem to be, in one of the economy I'm referring to for a comparative study will give us more others. You value the utilization of land, that's Nigeria.
Yeah.
And then you go for cultivation of cotton and maybe silk and all that kind of raw materials that leads to provide raw materials for textile, which textile takes us to industry, and which industry, because the issue of textile industry, which is now so far in Africa, if I'm not, you may correct me or give me the right information, you seem to be excelling more than most of other countries. Because most of the African countries, they are exporting second-hand clothes and the first-hand clothes from Taiwan and China, and which undermines the development of our economies, especially in the area of trade.
Yeah.
And also, after the industrialization, then this supports export. How do you make it? Which factors that favor this to happen? And also, in terms of the role played by the citizens, and also the government commitment to support agriculture.
Yeah, so again, like I said, if you look at the Nigerian case for things like cotton, it's been a bad story. In the 70s and 80s, the textile industry was very vibrant.
1970s and 1980s.
To the early 80s or mid 80s, things happened.
Even last year, that it was vibrant, by the way.
It was really vibrant, but again, oil production killed those industries. In fact, a lot of the textile factories in Kano all closed down. In the south, they all closed down because they were no longer viable. Again, that's where government has a role to play in terms of its policies. What was happening was that these companies, one case for Nigeria was the cost of power went so high because there was not sufficient power. So people have to generate their own power, so which cost those industries not to become economically viable. It was just cheaper to import from China. So government has a role to play to restrict nations in Africa from becoming a dumping ground for the selling of all things coming from China, India.
And we pay our shilling, it is being undermined against the dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. So why manufacturing died in Nigeria was because it became cheaper to bring them from China to Nigeria rather than manufacturing it in Nigeria. And the same thing in most African countries. It's cheaper to bring them from China. We produce ginger, but you'll be surprised that there may still be ginger coming from China into Uganda.
To Uganda, true.
Because it's cheaper. So, and why are they cheaper? Economies of scale. They do things on a large scale. They have a network of industries close to each other, helping one another to reduce their margin. And the industries here don't have that competitive advantage. So the role that government has to play is to create those competitive advantage that allows people to produce things here that can be cheap as what they produce in China. If it's costing me the same thing to get a product from Kabale to Kampala and sell at a particular price, and it's the same price to get something from China down to Kampala, why go to China? We go to China because we get them cheaper. And so we flood the market with those goods. And then we sniff life out of the local manufacturing and production. So at the end of the day, what we simply do is sell products. So Chinese come here, buy cassava, take it to China, produce industrial starch, and bring it back to sell to our industries here.
Value chain.
Yeah.
The issue of value chain.
It's a value chain problem. So, and Uganda has a huge opportunity to start doing value addition before export. That way, you can actually double or triple your export earning.
Yeah, that's good information. And to the policymakers outside there, this is not a new language. I understand. The NRM has always spoken about such kind. The NRM government has always talked about such kind of language, the value chain, the value addition. But we desire to see the realization of it and invest in it, because action speaks louder than words, and it's what much more we need. Because the policies are designed, you outside there, please, we are making this emphatic remark to prepare us, look into how we are doing it. And our dear guests also reminded us, the dear viewers and listeners, that the competitive advantage of Uganda needs to improve. I was able to earmark some of other areas that makes up the competitive advantage that you could be talking about, and which can be an environment favorable for production and to enhance productivity. The taxation on goods and services, and basically like on the production sector, like of agriculture. If you talk about the pesticides, they are supposed to be free from taxation, right? And also we look at the transport cost. The transport cost, I mentioned it. We still have it as a challenge because we use much more roads, and the cost of transport by road transport is quite higher, because even the petroleum we are using here, the oil petroleum, is also transported on road, and you know what it means, a comparison of the cost using the transport and the railways. Then you also, I think, what you referred to, competitive advantage, cheap credit access. The access to credit, and which is favorable, seems to still be a challenge. Most of the banking sector is at 60% or 70% estimated being, supported by the foreigners. The banking sector, the commercial banks, minus of course our Bank of Uganda, which is the main administrative board, parastatal board, and also some of other upcoming banks. We have like the Centenary Bank, the Postal Bank, but most of other banks, I can have a list endless, they are foreign banks, and whose credit, the cost is higher. And to the dear viewers, as I make this emphatic point or remark, that affects, for those who want to go, let's say for investment, it affects them. I would like to call upon you as you again give us a highlight in the second remaining minutes. We will go for the short break. We'll be looking at the recommendations, the highlighted recommendations that can help us to achieve what we intend to achieve. Stay tuned on Smart 24 TV. Don't go away. We have the last session that will be dealing on the recommendation. We have stated it all with comparative analysis, but we would like to look at the proposed recommendation that may be ideal for us to take on as a developing economy. Thank you.